Where were you when Martin Luther King Jr. was shot?
I was teaching at this all-black high school in Chicago at the time. And they called school. We still had school, and so I showed up, as everybody did, but it was, you know, all the students were in the halls. People weren't going to their classes. It was just, everyone was very, very disturbed. And there were riots beginning. I don't know if you've read about that, but all over the country, people were so upset that riots broke out in a lot of cities. And I could see from my classroom window, one of the streets in Chicago, there were fires being set and people rioting on the street. So it was, they let school out, but they let the black teachers go, but they made the white teachers stay because they were afraid there were people, white people were being pulled out of their cars and things in the black neighborhoods. So they made us stay, and we had to stay at the school most of the day.
So they thought that you guys were going to, you know, use anger because of...
They were afraid that we would be in danger if we went, because it was a black neighborhood, that we should probably stay at the school.
Like, you know, you said he was inspirational, and like, you know, when he passed away, like, the things that you learned from him, like, what did you stick with, you know?
Oh, all of it. I mean, it made it seem even more important because his words, I don't know if you've seen the speech that he gave the night before he was shot. I mean, he had a sense that he was going to die. I mean, even in fact, when I was working with him in Chicago, there were many times where we were told somebody's, you know, there's word out that somebody's going to get Dr. King. So he was constantly being threatened. And that last night before he died, he said, you know, I may not get to the mountaintop. Remember? Have you heard that speech? But I know that we as a people will get there. So that was the thing, is that he inspired people to keep on doing what he had done, because he knew it would happen even though he might not be here to see it.
Were there other leaders besides Martin Luther King that inspired you?
There were a lot. You mean people I worked with? I think all of the people I worked with, and it wasn't just the leaders. You know, it was, there were a lot of young people who, in fact, a lot of the staff in Chicago were Southerners. They were young black people who had met Dr. King in the South. And so they came up north to work with him. And it was a whole different life for them. I mean, talk about me going south and working. These were young Southerners who then came north. And they were an inspiration. They would get up at these staff meetings, and they had really learned nonviolence, and they had been a part, you know, these are young people who'd been jailed over and over and over in the South. And they were still fighting, and still, you know, they'd gotten very strong in their beliefs and what they were doing.
Like, what other kinds did you see? Like, yeah, you said you saw some about, like, colored-only waiting room and whites-only waiting room. Like, where else were signs at?
Oh, it was everywhere. Everywhere you went. The restrooms, you know, separate restrooms. In fact, that book, Black Like Me, the white man who's now suddenly black, he said that when he started getting advice from the black community, you know, they'd have to get a drink of water, they'd have to walk miles in a particular, like in New Orleans, or to go to the bathroom. They'd have to kind of plan their day because there were so few places where they could go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, or, you know, it was just very, very difficult anywhere in the South.
So, like, did you ever see, like, you know, a black person trying to go into, like, a white person's restroom or something just because they really had to go and, you know, they couldn't hold it?
I didn't see that, but people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, so they wouldn't dare try.
They wouldn't dare. That was the part that was just so tragic, because there's the whole sit-in movement began in the lunch counters when a few black students decided that they didn't think it was fair they couldn't eat lunch counters, so they sat at the lunch counters, they were arrested immediately. You know, they sat down, asked for something to eat or drink, and they were arrested. So then some more students would come in, they were arrested, you know, and it just happened all day long. They wouldn't allow it. It was against the law.
Have you ever like went into a black-only restaurant?
Oh yeah, that was okay. I mean, that's where I ate. In Chicago, that's where I ate. In Mississippi, if I went out to eat, that's where I had to go because I had my black friends with me. And that community was welcoming. I rode the buses that mostly black people rode. I mean, they looked at me kind of like funny, like what was I doing on the bus? But
just probably because, you know, they were taught like white people aren't like accustomed to us, and
right.
so they were probably, you know, shocked and stuff.
Right.
Right. I saw on your website that Abraham Lincoln was your hero. Can you tell me why?
Well, I was fascinated with his story, and I think a part of it was just that you know, it's told so simply in the history books that he freed the slaves, and that he was such a courageous man in the middle of, you know, the Civil War to take a stand and try and hold the country together. But I also remember, I think my favorite thing that I learned about Abraham Lincoln was when he was a young man, he had a store. Did you know that? He was like a storekeeper. He and a friend of his had a store, and it failed. They had to take bankruptcy. And there was nothing he could do but take bankruptcy. And then he went on and he became, I think, a lawyer after that. But after he earned some money, he went back to the community where he had taken bankruptcy, and he paid back all the people that he owed money to. And he wouldn't have had to do that because bankruptcy law means you don't have to pay back the money. But he did that, and that, I think of all the things I've ever known about him, that was the most profound, that he was such a man of his word and of his beliefs, that if he believed he owed someone something, then he wanted to make sure he paid them back. And it's those kind of values that I admired about him, and I think then, which made me admire people like Dr. King, because he stuck with his values no matter what the cost.
What advice do you have for young people? Who you want to make a difference in your life?
Well, I think it's kind of what I learned when I was young, is for young people to think about what those values are that you've been taught or that you've learned, or maybe there's someone for you like Abraham Lincoln that you really admire. What are those values? And then live them. Live them and really believe in yourselves, and believe that no matter how difficult it seems to stick with the things that you know to be right, to do that. And it doesn't always have to be in a big way, you know. It can be if you're with your friends and you see somebody treating someone not right, have the courage to speak up, even though there may be a consequence. You know, people may say, "Oh, it's none of your business," you know. But if you feel to speak up, to just live your life in that way, to be true to yourself, and to sort of follow what you feel to be whatever. For me, it was like when I saw that brochure, there was no question in my mind I had to do this. You know, that things like that come up for young people all the time. Something that really interests you, and you say, "Oh, wow, I just got to do that." And then you say, "Oh, but I can't do that." Well, that's not true. You can always do anything if you really feel strongly to do it.